Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum dear students. I'm your teacher Simin Amir and I'm here again with a new lecture. I hope everything is going well at your side. Uh, Please follow the instructions for preventive measures in these COVID-19 pandemic. Stay at home, stay healthy, stay blessed. Let's proceed to the lecture. This is my lecture number 10 for grade 01 and today we have a history class. So we have to continue with chapter number 12, which is how far did Pakistan achieve stability following the death of Jinnah. As I said in the previous lecture, that General Sikandar Mirza also proceeded to outlaw all political parties. He appointed General Ayub Khan, the commander-in-chief of the Pakistani army, as the chief martial law administrator and nominated him to become the new prime minister of Pakistan in charge with administering the country. On 24th of October, General Sikandar Mirza appointed Ayub Khan as prime minister. Ayub Khan had on several occasions declined an offer from Ghulam Muhammad to take over the country. But by 1958, he had come to believe that it was now necessary. So on 27th October, he forced Mirza to resign and was exiled to London. Pakistan began its first period of military rule. So Ayub Khan took on the office of president as well, because Mirza was exiled. And to his supporters, this event was known as the Glorious Revolution for Pakistan. After taking power, General Ayub Khan announced that he hoped that a period of military rule would settle Pakistan. Since the death of Qaid and Liaquat Ali Khan, the government of Pakistan had been subject to so much change and uncertainty that it had been difficult to develop industry, support agriculture, and maintain even a basic level of social welfare. Once stability was restored and Pakistan was more settled, Ayub Khan said the government would provide a constitution that would combine democracy with discipline. The first step in Ayub Khan's constitutional reforms came with the introduction of the Basic Democracies Order on 26 October 1959. It consisted of a network of local self-governing bodies to provide a link between the government and the people. Primary governing units were set up to conduct local affairs. Their members were elected by the constituencies of 800 to about 1,000 adults. So it was a system that the power and the authority was given to the local authorities. Even this authority had been given to the on district level, on divisional level. So structure of the basic democracy as shown in the diagram, this was a four-tier system in which ordinary people elected union council members who in turn elected district and divisional members. Later it was stated in the 1962 constitution that the 80,000 elected basic democrats would also form the electoral college for the election of the president and members of the central and provincial legislature. So I think that was a kind of politics. Like you can see that the 80,000 elected basic democrats of this basic democracy, when the total number of the basic democrats were 80,000. These were elected first and then they made their own electoral college. Like they were able to elect president and to elect the members of the central and provincial legislatures. So obviously, the people who were elected or who were selected as a basic democrats would be in a favor of Ayub Khan. So they were given the right to elect the president for the future of the Pakistan. As I said, that total 80,000 elected basic Democrats would also form the electoral college for the election of the president and the members of the central and provincial legislature. So at first, the election were held in January 1960, in which there were only 40,000 basic Democrats were elected in each province. In each province, there were 40,000 basic Democrats, and they were elected, and they were given the right to elect the future president. As Ayub Khan came under martial law, he wasn't came under the democracy. So that wasn't a democratic policy. He came under martial law. So on at the end of 1959, Ayub asked the basic Democrats for a vote of confidence. So he was taking a vote of confidence that he would be here as a president of Pakistan or not. Almost 95% of them, the basic Democrats declared their confidence in him, and on 17 February 1960, he was confirmed as president. He then announced the creation of a Constitution Commission to make recommendation for the new constitution, as the previous constitution, which was in 1956. The constitution was made in 1956, and that constitution was dismissed by President Mirza. 1962 Constitution. On page number 130, you can see 1962 Constitution. The new constitution was announced on 1st March 1962. Although Ayub described it as combining democracy with discipline. In reality, it set up a total presidential form of government. Democratic discipline is the use of natural and logical consequences rather than reward and punishment. Like people are responsible for their own behavior and make decisions and then are held accountable for consequences of those decisions. So that was that is totally depending on the democracy. But here, the constitution was totally a presidential form of government. So points that are given in the slides are not in order, so I'm going to explain these points from your book. The president could not be removed unless impeached. Impeached means like if he is charged with any misconduct. So he could not be removed. The first point is totally presidential. The second point, the president nominated the cabinet from the members of the National Assembly. So that is the president who can nominate the cabinet from the National Assembly. Again, a presidential form of government. The third point, is the president nominated the heads of the judiciary and the provincial governors. The head of judiciary means the chief justice, and the provincial governors, governor for all the provinces, who then nominated their cabinets. Again, president took the authority, and then the national legislature could not pass a law without the approval of the president. The National Legislature Council, who are responsible for amendment of the laws, cannot pass any of the law without the approval of the president. So the constitution shall be amended only by a 2/3 majority of the assembly and the assent of the president. Like the national legislature could not pass any law without the approval of assembly of the president. And if they want to amend the constitution, that shall be amended only by a two-thirds majority of the assembly and assent of the president. If the president does not agree, it shall need a 3/4 majority, and even then the president shall choose whether to dissolve the assembly or call a referendum. Like if the 3/4 of the assembly goes against the assembly and they says that they need the dissolution of the assembly and they want the new election, then even president will choose. The president will decide. the dissolution of the assembly or call a referendum. A referendum is like to ask them whether they want to be with the current government or they want a new election. So, yes or no. The new constitution, sorry, the new constitution was introduced without debate, and Ayub brought martial law to end soon afterwards. The new National Assembly met for the first time on 8 June 1962. One of its first acts was to remove the ban on political parties. It appeared that Pakistan was moving nearer to a democratic system. But actually, Ayub's reform had increased the powers of the ruling elite. You know who are the ruling elites? It's a small group of powerful people who had a disproportionate amount of wealth and political power in the society. This had happened because the major landlords dominated the elections to the basic democracies and often used coercion or bribery to influence the result. Like they corrupted the results of the election. They used rishwat to influence the result. They gave money to the people and asked them for vote. The constitution also further upset the people of East Pakistan. They felt that they could have little power, part in governing Pakistan. Gradually, they were coming to realize that Pakistan's government was in the hands of military and civil officials from West Pakistan only. So various steps were taken to placate the people of East Pakistan. Placate means to calm them or to control their anger. Three main steps were taken. The first one was both Urdu and Bengali were recognized as two of the national languages. So even Bengali was a national language just to calm the people of East Pakistan. Second point is the National Assembly session was to be held in both Dhaka and Islamabad. Dhaka in East Pakistan and Islamabad in West Pakistan. So that was again in favor of both wings. Then, if the president were from West Pakistan, then the Speaker of the National Assembly was to be formed from East Pakistan. So that was again to calm them. And despite these measures, the people of Pakistan, East Pakistan still believed that Pakistan was in reality government of East Pakistan by West Pakistan. They are governing the East Pakistan by West Pakistan. This resulted in a feeling of unease in East Pakistan. So, as stated in the Constitution, in January 1965, elections were held for the presidency. Ayub Khan was nominated by a new party, the Convention Muslim League, which he had helped to form. So that was formed by his help. The new party, Convention Muslim League, and they nominated Ayub Khan from their party. And he believed that the opposition parties were too divided to put up a credible opponent in the election. So he said that he believed that the opposition is too divided and unable to defeat him. So he was, however, wrong. The opposition parties all agreed to support the sister and advisor of the Qaid, Muhtarma Fatma Jinnah. Ayub Khan won 64% of the votes, compared to Ms. Jinnah's 36% only. This result was challenged by the opposition, who claimed that the voting had been rigged, like the results came under rigging, like it was dhandli. There were riots in Karachi and East Pakistan in which 20 people were killed. These protests and riots were against the results of the election. Ayub Khan had been re-elected, but at the price of riots by opposition groups who believed their candidate had been cheated. So Ayub Khan is perhaps best remembered for a series of economic and social reforms which brought praise from politicians and economists around the world. Like his economic and social reforms were admired by the people or throughout the world. Before him, there was so much uncertainty in the government. Many people came to rule the country. In 1968, he celebrated this work by calling the period of a decade of development. So let's discuss agriculture reforms first. From the very beginning, a few notable agricultural families had spread their tentacles in the political setup of Pakistan. Tentacles means their control. They spread their control in the political setup of Pakistan. In the former West Pakistan, politics was dominated by a few wealthier landowners' families. So Ayub Khan's advisor wanted to bring reforms in the field of agriculture and make it more productive. They said that many small subsistence holdings could never be efficient. So they introduced some new land reforms. So for a new land reforms, a commission was appointed in October 1958, who had to submit their report within 3 months. The report led to a number of reforms aimed at eliminating the monopoly of the big landowners and particularly the absentee landowners in the politics, providing security for tenure and providing fairer distribution and ownership of land. Let me explain on all the points in the next slide. A law was passed saying that no farm could be smaller than 12.5 acres. No farm could be smaller than 12.5 acres or larger than 500 acres irrigated. If it is irrigated, no farm could be larger than 500 acres. And unirrigated, so no farm be larger than 1000 acres. The law stated that no farm could be smaller than 12.5 acres or larger than 500 acres if irrigated or 1000 acres if unirrigated. This meant that many smaller farmers found their land was redistributed. However, the resulting larger farms, as a result, the larger farms was formed. These larger farms did produce a steady rise in food output. Big landowners were forced to find tenants. Tenants like the rentals, or we can say a person who pay rent for using of land. So the tenants for parts of their land, and this too raised productivity as the tenants and smaller farms were often more efficient than the larger. Three major dams were built to help irrigation. The three major dams were the Mangla Dam, the Warsak Dam, and Terbela Dam. These were built to help irrigation. You know that from dam we can use perennial canals. We can make perennial canals for the efficient supply of water throughout the year. Farmers were also loaned money to build wells to reduce the need of canal irrigation. As you know, that the canal irrigation will use the water from the rivers and from the dams. If we make inundation canals, obviously, if the canal will inundate its water or flooded water, or it will give its water only in the rainy season. But if we use the water of the dams, obviously it will reduce the capacity of the power generation. So it's better to have to tap out the groundwater, to have some wells. So farmers were loaned, they were given money by the government as a loan to build wells to reduce the pressure of water on the canal irrigation. These reforms revitalized agriculture and crop yields. Revitalize means strengthen the agriculture and crop yields were at an all-time record. Ayub said that they had brought about a green revolution. However, it should be noted that much of the increased productivity was due to mechanization. Machines were used, the technology was used, which could generally only be afforded by a big landowners. Mostly the effects were positive, like a total of 2.5 million acres of land was resumed and 2.3 million areas of land was distributed to nearly 1.8 lakh peasants, who were the small landowners. Movement started for voluntary reduction in the individual ownership, encouraging creation of a strong middle class of owner-operated farms of economic size, and some people benefited while the powerful landowners, obviously it's Pakistan and many people are using many policies for their own benefit, and especially the powerful landlords are doing these kind of things. The powerful landlords managed to hang on to most of their land holdings. Quite a bit of the land they gave up was actually very poor land that they were glad to get rid of these lands. As Ayub said that they had brought a green revolution. So that was the time of green revolution. But there were different phases. From 1960 to 1965, main cause of the growth was the increase in irrigation facilities, mainly the tube wells that the farmers were loaned, the poor farmers were loaned by the government for making tube wells. Between 1960 to 65, about 25,000 tube wells were installed, each costing rupees 5,000 to 12,000, and the farm area served by tube wells doubled. And the second phase was like growth took place mainly because of the expanded irrigation facilities were supplemented by the technology package. The technology package of high yielding varieties of seeds, high yielding varieties of seeds were used, the chemical fertilizers were used, and the pesticides to get rid of pests. Economic development was a priority for in Ayub Khan. Ayub Khan's advisor pressed for more industrial development. He recruited able economists and advisors. Recruited means appointed, so he appointed able economists and advisors, many of whom had been trained in the USA. So successful were his policies that businessmen and leaders around the world began to praise the Pakistan miracle. This was carried out with the help of loans from more industrialized Western countries, particularly the USA, Germany, and the UK. In 1962, an oil refinery was established in Karachi and a mineral development corporation set up for the exploration of mineral deposits. So Pakistan established its own oil refinery in Karachi, and that was because it is cheaper to import raw oil or crude oil from other countries rather than refined oil. So we were like, we established our own refinery here in Pakistan, then we were importing crude oil from there, which was cheap, and then we were refining the same oil here in Pakistan. In 1964, an economic union was formed with Iran and Turkey, the Regional Cooperation for Development (RCD). This RCD organization is for the regional cooperation and development, and it was a multi-governmental organization which was originally established by Iran, and Turkey and Pakistan later joined this corporation, in which the three countries agreed to develop ties in trade, commerce, and industry. An export bonus scheme was set up offering incentives to industries who increased exports. In February 1959, the government announced a new industrial policy of gradual liberalization of economy to pave way for smooth industrial growth. Main emphasis on the utilization of raw materials available in the country to benefit small and medium scale industries. Obviously, if we are importing the raw material from other country, it will increase the economic burden on the country. So that was the main emphasis was given on the utilization of the raw material that was available locally. As a result of these policies, economic growth rose sharply. The average annual rate by which the economy grew in the 1960s was just 7%, which was three times that of India. Production did rise rapidly and the Pakistani economy improved significantly, but the new wealth created did little to benefit the large numbers of Pakistanis living near the poverty line or below the poverty line, like the poor people. They did not get any benefit from this increase in the GDP. In 1968, it was revealed or disclosed that just 22 families of the country controlled 66% of Pakistani's industrial assets. And the same families also controlled 80% of Pakistani's banking and insurance companies. So, a small elite group of wealthy Pakistanis had almost complete control of Pakistan's wealth. It did not go unnoticed in East Pakistan that almost all these families were in West Pakistan. Also, while industry was improving rapidly, Pakistan was increasingly dependent on foreign aid. Pakistan Industrial Development Corporation, the PIDC, was set up with a capital of rupees 1 billion. It was put in charge to promote the following industries like jute paper, board and newsprint, heavy engineering, fertilizers, sugar, cements, and textiles, etc. Four new states for small industries were established in Bahawalpur, Gujarat, Larkana, and Peshawar. This helped in the process of industrialization by handling the initial difficulties faced by the new industries. Some of the new reforms were introduced in the social sectors as well. A strict action was taken against the hoarding, black markets, and smuggling. With many shortages of goods, some goods were hoarded so that the price would rise and they could be sold at a bigger profit. Just like nowadays, the white flour, or we can say the oil, that is hoarded by many of the rich peoples. Tough action brought down prices and goods were seized from the profiteers and many arrests were made. So steps were taken for the fixation of the prices of essential foods. Shortly after taking power, the government fixed the prices of milk, vegetable and ghee to stop traders from making too much profit at the expense of the people. There was also an attempt to deal with shelterless people. In cities, especially Karachi, refugees from the partition era had still not been able to find permanent homes. Ayub Khan appointed Lieutenant General Azam Khan as the rehabilitation minister, and he settled about 75% refugees in newly built dwellings or houses near Karachi. Laws were passed that factory owners had to provide accommodation for their workers at a reasonable rent, although it did not specify that this accommodation had to be of a reasonable quality. So, some important measures were taken to control the growing population. In 1955, a legal commission was set up to suggest reforms of the family and marriage laws. In 1961, Family Laws Ordinance issued. A family planning program was set up which was largely funded by American loans. The government used radio, cinema, newspapers, posters, and leaflets to persuade Pakistanis to limit the size of their families. Medical facilities were also improved. More medical and nursing training schools were set up. This was to increase the number of well trained doctors and nurses in the country. Some educational reforms were also introduced after the report of the Commission on National Education, which identified the importance of education as an investment in national growth. Education up to grade 5 was made free and compulsory. Secondary education boards were set up to oversee secondary schooling up to class 12, and a new curriculum or a syllabus for schools was drawn up, and it was suggested that new textbooks should be published. An extensive literacy program was started building new schools and colleges. Technical education was made compulsory or mandatory, and university degree courses were extended from 2 to 3 years. The progress was made to improve scientific education and research. And civil defense training, sorry, the spelling is not correct here for the defense, it's C. So, civil defense training was made mandatory or compulsory in the schools and colleges. Since partition, the capital had been Karachi. Ayub's government decided to build a new capital in 1959. The site of Islamabad was chosen to replace Karachi as the capital of Pakistan. Traditionally, development in Pakistan was focused on Karachi, and President Ayub Khan wanted it to be equally distributed. Karachi was located at one end of the country and could be easily attacked from the Arabian Sea. A capital which was easily accessible from all parts of the country was needed. Karachi, a business center, was also considered unsuitable, partially because of intervention of business interest in government affairs. So, construction was started in October 1961 and the city came into life on 26 October 1966. When the first office building of Islamabad was occupied in 1967, Islamabad was officially made the capital. Work on the city's principal buildings, streets, and facilities continued and was completed by the mid 1970s. It is a modern and carefully planned city. You know that Pakistan is the first planned city, Islamabad is the first planned city of Pakistan. You might have heard about its sector. It is a city which has which have special sectors, phases, streets like F1, F2, F3. F is a sector, then F1, F2, F3, F4. And you might have heard about the Markaz area like F10 Markaz, F9 Markaz. Markaz is a specially planned commercial area in each sector, exactly in the center of this sector. So that is a beautiful and planned city, and you know that Islamabad is considered as the world's second beautiful capital city. The secretariat blocks are the administrative and policy planning nerve center of the country. They cover an area of 92,900 square meters. The city is divided into 8 largely self contained zones, each characterized by its predominant usage, such as the diplomatic enclave, the commercial district, the educational sector, the industrial and residential areas, each with its own shopping area and park. So that is carefully planned. Everything is in its own places, like there are special commercial areas, residential areas. There are beautiful parks in each sector, and you can see the zero point is there. The um, um, blue area is there. The government, the we can say the enclave area is there. The political unrest or the downfall of Ayub Khan. In 1965, Pakistan went to war with India over Kashmir. Ayub's government had provoked India into war. Provoke means like uh, that was the thinking of people that Ayub governments induce us in this war. But neither side was able to win a decisive victory, a final victory. Ayub told the people that Pakistan had won the war. But the peace treaty at Tashkent contained no reference to how the Kashmir issue should be settled. The treaty at Tashkent, like it was a Tashkent Declaration, that was a peace agreement between India and Pakistan signed on 10th January 1966 that resolved the Indo-Pak War of 1965. It was to regain that disputed Kashmir territory that Pakistan had started the war. Ayub sacked the foreign minister, like he dismissed the foreign minister, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. The foreign minister was the Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, who he blamed for the failings in the war. Bhutto now became a focal point for opposition to Ayub. By 1968, many people were discontented or dissatisfied with the government. It seemed to be undemocratic as there were numerous accusations of intimidation and vote rigging. Accusation means like allegation or charges of rigging, and intimidation like terrorizing. So there were allegation or charges of terrorism and vote rigging on the government. The economy was improving, yet only a few people were benefiting from this. Agriculture production was rising, but so were food prices. Food prices were also increasing. In October 1968, there were students' protests all over West Pakistan. On a visit to Peshawar, Ayub was the target of a failed assassination attempt. That was a murder attack, a killing attack. When Ayub carried out widespread arrests, including Bhutto, there were more protests which spread to East Pakistan even. Ayub Khan's repressive or oppressive or strict policies succeeded in uniting the various parties that opposed him. So all the opposition was united. In January 1969, of in January 1969, 8 of them formed the Democratic Action Committee. So the in the opposition, in the opposition, uh, 8 of the opposition groups or parties formed the Democratic Action Committee. They wanted proper elections, the lifting of emergency powers, and the autonomy for East Pakistan. Ayub tried to calm the unrest, but he was failed. On 17 February 1969, Ayub Khan withdrew the emergency powers and released many political prisoners arrested the previous October. He began negotiating or talking with the opposition, but he had done too little too late. Even his cherished, his own nurtured basic democracy schemes began to reverse as basic democrats resigned in large numbers. The opposition rapidly gained support while he and his party rapidly lost it. By March, he realized that he did not have enough support to stay in power. On 25th March 1969, he resigned, but he did not call for new elections to choose another president. Instead, he handed over power to the army, and for the second time in short history, Pakistan experienced the second martial law. Following the declaration of martial law, the commander-in-chief of the army, General Yahya Khan, was appointed as chief martial law administrator and also took over as president. He announced that basic democracies had not been a success. There would be a properly elected government, and the one unit system had not worked, so there would be a return to provincial government. The one unit scheme, which had the West Pakistan became a single unit, there were no provinces. So he reversed the one unit scheme, and there would be a return to provincial government, like there will be 4 provinces with 4 different provincial governments. Although he was a military commander, Yahya was committed to bringing democracy to Pakistan based on one man, one vote. So that is completely a democratic system. The one unit plan and the 1962 constitution were annulled, or we can say cancelled. So once again, the constitution was cancelled, and Pakistan's Pakistan's 4 provinces re-established. So The 1956 constitution was annulled or cancelled by Mirza, and once again the constitution of 1962, because Ayub Khan made many of the amendments in the constitution and make it purely presidential, so that was cancelled here. From January 1970, political activity resumed. The various parties began campaigning to elect a National Assembly of 300 members. The assembly would have 120 days to draw up a new constitution. 3 days after the National Assembly election, there would be provincial elections. The election were to be held in October 1970. It was decided that the elections for the new government, as he decided to make democracy in the country, so he asked the officials to conduct elections in the country in October 1970, but they had to be postponed because of severe floodings in East Pakistan caused such chaos that voting was impossible. The elections were finally held on 7 December 1970, and for the first time ever were held on the principle of one man, one vote, like a pure democratic system. The results were such a shock that they created a constitutional crisis in Pakistan. That crisis was to split Pakistan into two separate countries. Yes, the result really shocked the Pakistanis, as the party from the East Pakistan, the Awami, there were two main parties, one Pakistan People's Party in the West Pakistan, and one important party was the Pakistan People's Party, Pakistan People's Party in the West Pakistan, and the second one was the Awami League Party from the East Pakistan. These two were the major parties. And after the elections in the December 1970, it was shocking that the Awami League Party won the major seats from East Pakistan, and it was their right to form the government. But even the opening of assemblies was delayed by General Yahya Khan, and they never wanted to give the whole authority in the hand of East Pakistan. That's why the two wings were separated, and a new country was made as Bangladesh. So we are done with the chapter. I hope everything will be clear now. And here I'm going to give you an assignment. Two questions. One is for 7 marks. The second one is for 14 marks. Why was Ayub Khan forced to resign in 1969? You have to give me at least 3 reasons, as you know, in 3 different paras. The second question is, how successful were Ayub Khan's economic and agriculture policies? Give reasons for your answer. Now you have, there were some more policies and more reforms given by Ayub Khan. You have to mention all, and then in conclusion you have to give your own view that these were successful or not. So that is your assignment. Do it in your notebook, in your neat notebook. Please make a margin line. Must write today's day and date, and maintain your index. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope everything will be clear now, because I have explained everything in more detail for your better understanding. But if still you have any confusion or any question, drop your questions in the comment box, and we'll meet again with a new video, with a new lecture and with the new chapter. Till then, bye.